We just arrived on the ground, but Dennis Cavanaugh with the National Weather Service here in Little Rock, Arkansas, along with Charles Peak here. Dennis has been here for 2.5 hours or so. Charles is flying a drone. So Dennis, you're here to survey the scene and
Yes,
talk about what's going on. And we're going to get more into surveying, why we survey, the importance of that, what it takes. But let's talk about what you're seeing, what you've seen already since you've been here 2.5 hours. And as you look at the monitor with Charles, what are you seeing? What's going through your mind?
So what we drove around with Pulaski County and Little Rock OEM, and that's how we found the worst of the damage here. And what we're looking at here is it's a house that was about 1.5 stories. And what we look at when we survey to try to find the maximum damage that was done by the winds is we try to find out what caused the failure, basically what allowed the winds into the house. Once we determine what allowed the winds into the house, then we actually look at where the walls failed, where they fell down or fell into the house. We look at the walls, see how they were attached to the foundation, and that gives us an idea of, you know, what caused the damage. How much of it was wind, how much of it was momentum carried by the initial walls that fell, and then how much of it was gravity if the house fell in. And we see both in this case. We see in very, very strong, intense winds coming into the tornado from where we're standing right now. And so that was inflow winds into the tornado. That caused that garage and that entire outer wall to fall inwards. And then it caused the entire top story of the home to get blown downwind quite a ways, actually, several hundred yards. And, you know, within the debris itself, we look for things that haven't necessarily been tested before, but we look for things like missiles that were generated. So 2x4s that got shot through walls, things like that, and debarked trees. And we see both of those happening, you know, at this house and at this location. And again, what we're looking for is how strong were the winds, you know, at the maximum point of damage, how strong were those winds, and that's what we derive the rating of the tornado from.
Because you were talking a lot about a structure of a home, getting very detailed in how a home is made. And just to kind of get back to rudimentary storm surveying, it's the fact that there's not anemometers everywhere. We don't know how fast the wind's going, and if there was, they'd get destroyed.
That's absolutely
pretty much
true.
So to sum it up, if this is correct, the knowing what a structure, how it's made, and what it takes to destroy that structure, you get the estimated winds. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah, we take the damage that was done and we relate it back to a wind speed, because you're right, we don't really have weather instrumentation that can survive a tornado yet.
Okay, so also another thing, a first responder, a fire truck just came by.
Yes.
Right? There's dead, but power lines down.
Yep.
It feels very chaotic. Someone came up to us and said, hey, we still need food and water. Kind of feels like maybe more organizational help is needed here for the residents and the workers.
Yeah.
So again, somewhat chaotic, but you're here. We talk about the importance of being here right after.
Yeah, and that's just basically see what the tornado did, because if we don't see what the tornado did immediately, people are going to clean up quick, and they should. They should clean up as fast as they can to, you know, try to get their possessions back, to get life, you know, back to normal as soon as possible. But we have to see almost the forensic evidence of what did the tornado do, because as you mentioned, we can't measure the tornado directly. So we have to look at how the damage was done, where it was displaced, measure all of those things so that we get an idea for how the tornado interacted with the ground and with residents and how it produced damage. Part of this is documentation, and part of it is, will help in future research as well if we do a good job documenting it.
Okay, Dennis, if you walk with me for just a second. So we're looking out here. We're on the west side of Arkansas, and you see all of this, right? And on your shirt, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah.
You work here.
Yes, sir.
You live here. You're a human being. You're talking a lot about, you know, 2x4s and attachments.
Yeah.
These are essentially your neighbors. What's going through your mind when you have to come out here to where maybe your friends or maybe family live?
Well, and you know, that's why another important part of the survey process is talking to the people that live in those homes. And what we're most fortunate, what we're most thankful for, is that nobody died in Little Rock from this tornado. So within the city of Little Rock, we didn't have any fatalities. I know there was one in North Little Rock, but we wind up with this massive residential area getting destroyed, essentially, and we end up with injuries and not fatalities. And that's what because we can't control the weather, all we can do is try to give people information before the tornado hits so that they can take the appropriate action to keep themselves and their families safe. And if we do that, we feel that, we at the Weather Service, working with you at the Weather Channel, other broadcast media outlets, we're doing everything we can to alert people in harm's way to seek shelter, because we can rebuild this. We can't replace lives, and that's the most important thing.
So in a sense, you come and now you're going to eventually have an idea of how strong the storm was.
Yes.
And you look and you'll see, and some people who live here, in some sense, it's academic.
Right.
But what they know is a tornado ruined their house,
And that's all that matters.
And that's all that matters. But what is it? And knowing that there's a threat next week, too.
Right.
How does this hopefully maybe save lives next week?
Well, what it does is, a lot of times after a disaster, we do outreach, we do public safety campaigns, and we teach storm spotter and storm safety classes all the time. And the unfortunate result is destruction from the storms. The positive side is it usually gets more people interested in those classes, interested in public safety as it relates to weather. And so when those classes are better attended, when you get just more people showing up for those free classes that are offered in the community, that really helps educate and really helps build out the community outreach and that safety. Because again, because we can't do anything about the storm itself, because it's all about educating people, giving them information, they can't do the right thing with that information if they don't understand it. And so that education and those outreach programs, when those get more well attended, we build a more resilient community. So that's usually the biggest upside of this.
Okay, and taking away, trying to find something when you see all of this. So we're going to continue checking in with you throughout this afternoon. Can you talk a little bit about what's left? What are you going to be doing here in the coming minutes, coming hours?
So after we're done figuring out what the most intense part of the tornado, basically figuring out how strong the tornado was, then we have to figure out the path length and the width of it. And so we will go through all the communities and continue to survey damage. We probably won't get done with it all today, because in addition to surveying all the stuff you talked about, the engineering, the structures that were damaged, we do take the time and meet with all the family members present. And that's an important part of the process.
You meet with all the family members?
People, everybody who's there, we meet with.
Okay.
A lot of people have stayed in hotels, or they have other shelter, but we meet with everybody that's there, because that's an important part of the process, is meeting with the people whose lives were upended by this natural disaster, meeting with them, explaining to them what happened, and telling them, trying to give them comfort, and also just trying to tell them in the future how you can get weather information if they felt that the tornado caught them by surprise. So it is a surveying process to document the damage, but it's also connecting with people in the community itself.
It's outreach and connections.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to, again, continue to talk with you throughout this afternoon. And you still have to figure out, right, how, and also later, we don't have to get into it right now, but I want to ask you later on, how do you do that, right? I got a lot of questions about that. How do you determine the extent, the width and the length of a tornado that's as chaotic as it can be? But also, just for now, we just showed up. You've been here for a couple of hours. Can you give us and people who are watching perspective of how much of the damage in this part of West Little Rock are we actually seeing right now?
Yeah, so I mean, this is extensive damage, and you can see we're up on a hill, so you can see the field of the extent of the damage here. And this gives you a better idea of the width of the tornado.
Okay.
So, if you imagine this continuing to the northeast, you can kind of see the hole in the trees there where it went over the hill. So if you imagine this continuing off to the northeast, this continues through North Little Rock, Sherwood, into Jacksonville, and it actually moves into another county. So it's at least another 20, 25 miles off to the northeast.
Miles in progress.
In progress.
And that's your preliminary take, right?
That's just from radar. That's our preliminary take.
Okay.